The Fender Precision bass came out in 1951, just a year after the Telecaster. So-called Precision because of the frets, which meant that a guitarist could pick this thing up and learn to play it. A double bass wasn't very loud, and it was also very difficult to play. So actually this proved to be a proper problem solver. This dates from 1957 as a design. It was slightly different. It looked a bit more like the Telecaster initially. Now, in the second half of what I've just played, I had some stomp boxes. I had some effects pedals. Now, usually you would have effects pedals for guitar. So pretty much every guitarist that goes out gigging has got a selection of effects pedals. It might just be a few, or it might be a complete setup. But the bass player usually just plugs into the amp and just plays the bass lines of particular tunes. However, the role of the bass player has changed over the years. We've got Mike Kerr of Royal Blood, who made his bass sound like a guitar with loads of stomp boxes and that sort of thing. So it's just a real good exploration of what's possible. Jacob Pastorius made the bass a solo instrument in the 1970s and 80s, and so many people along the line have brought the bass guitar up to the fore, that whole disco era with all those complicated bass lines. However, really, to keep up with modern music and to have the sort of synth sounds and stuff, it's quite nice to have a few stomp boxes. So I've got my selection here, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that and how to order them, and basically a bit about what they do. Let's have a look. So just straight through, the bass just sounds nice and middly and very basic. But with the addition of some effects, you can create some other sounds. Now, my pedals are in a certain order. The first one is the bass synth. Now, the reason that it's the first one is that it's very, very fussy about what it sees. You don't want any effects beforehand. It's not actually very effective with active basses. You have to turn the volume down a bit, so it's perfect for use with the Precision. So if I just switch that on now, it's connected to this expression pedal as well. You don't need the expression pedal, but it's quite nice to have because you can just get some really good, cool sounds out of it. Or you can just leave it in one place. Now, after the bass synth, there's actually two outputs of this synthesizer. There's a dry output which feeds my octave pedal over here. Now, this octave pedal is also very, very fussy about what it sees. So it's essentially receiving a dry output signal regardless of whether this bass synth pedal is on or off. So if I just switch the octave on, so essentially there are two signal paths through my pedal board to allow these two pedals to respond properly to the output of this bass. Now, both of these, the synth and the octave bass here, feed a digital delay pedal here. Now, I don't usually use echo all that much. If I just give you a demo of it, it can muddy the bass a bit unless you're playing sort of higher up. However, the delay pedal acts as a bit of a mixer because I've got inputs A and B, which are coming from the octabass and the bass synth, and then the outputs of that are feeding my preamp over here. Now, this is a Studio Spares. It's like an active DI box, but it's very helpful in that it has two inputs here. Now, in addition to that, it's got a send and return. It's got an effects loop, which is actually where this fuzz pedal and the auto wah pedal go. Now, that means that the entire signal passes through these two pedals if I switch them on. So if I just get rid of the octave pedal for the moment, we've just got the auto wah. This has a sensitivity switch on it, so you can actually make it sort of ramp up a bit sooner in level. However, if you have it too high, you'd lose all your bass. So if I just turn it down a bit, it sort of descends to that bass, those bass frequencies a bit better. Then we've got the fuzz pedal. Now this is, you know, if you imagine Royal Blood. You know, you can play rock. But you can still have your bass synth. Because the bass synth comes first in the signal chain. Likewise, I could have my auto wah with the bass synth. Now, the answer with all of this is not to get too carried away. It's not to just use everything at once. It's just bringing stuff in subtly. So, for example, the bass synth here has got a mix switch. Or a mix, it's got two volumes. It's got the direct signal and the synth volume. So actually, most of the sound is the precision. With just a little bit of a synth thing on top. So you get the body of the bass with that sort of effect on it. Likewise, the octave, the octave switch itself, normal octave, which is straight through. I've got on maximum, which is basically sort of the same level as if the pedal was switched off. But then I've got the octave as well. Get some pretty cool sort of effects there, but it's still kept subtle. It doesn't sort of run away with itself a bit. Now this preamp here, this came from Studio Spares, very cheap. It was about £25. Really useful bit of kit. It's got bass, middle and treble output. It's got an XLR out, a line out. You can also have some various sort of filtering going on, or a shape button. So it just scoops out the mid a little bit and puts some bass on it. You know, you don't get any control over that shape, but you do have a notch gain here as well. It's all very subtle. It's just shaping that sound a bit. The input volume is this one here, so you can just set that. There's a peak light which shows if you're going over the top. So there it is. There is a selection of my pedals which I use for bass. The temptation is to have loads and loads of effects, but actually I've almost got too many here as it stands. But there is enough here to be able to do the sort of there's enough. To do all sorts of things. And of course that octave pedal, I mean, that's pretty angry. You've got to be careful that the effects aren't also much louder than the bass itself. So you can do things like changing the level of your octave, or indeed with the distortion. I mean, actually the distorted sound is slightly lower there, so we have a volume control on the end here. All the time you've got your delay pedal. So you've brought a design of a 1950s instrument up to kind of the present day with all of the sounds that you can get from bass synths or bass guitars or anything in the sort of whole rock and pop world. And there we go, a few stomp boxes.